Mr. Speaker. I join the Prime Minister in paying tribute to Corporal Dean John, Corporal Graham Stiff and Lance Corporal Christopher Harkett. The fact that more than 150 of our servicemen and women have been killed in Afghanistan is a reminder once again of the huge sacrifices our armed forces are making on our behalf. We praise their bravery, we honour their memory, and we must look after their families. Today, as has been said, we have seen unemployment rise to over 2 million. The increase in the claimant count is the sharpest rise since records began. Doesn't this reveal that the claims repeatedly made by the Prime Minister that Britain was one of the best placed countries in the world to withstand recession was simply nonsense?
Mr. Speaker, I came into politics and I stood for Parliament first because I wanted to help tackle unemployment and poverty. And that is why we are announcing the most comprehensive programme to help the unemployed. But I have to tell him the unemployment is higher in France, in Germany, in Japan, in America. It's higher in most of the other countries that we are dealing with. But we are taking urgent action to help those people who are unemployed. We are spending 1.3 billion helping our job centres and helping people in work. The Conservatives would not spend that money. I ask him why he would not help us deal with the problem of unemployment.
I have to say to the Prime Minister that members of Parliament on every side of this House will contrast what he's said with the fact that 144 of our further education colleges, the exact organisations we need to retrain people who are unemployed, are having their building projects halted. There is this enormous gulf between what he says every week and what his government is actually doing. But let me return to the question. People will simply not understand why the Prime Minister is so incapable of ever admitting that he got anything wrong. It's not just the unemployment figures today. The IMF has said that the recession will be deeper and longer in Britain than in many other countries, and that Britain will be the only major economy in the world that will be in recession next year. So let me ask him again. Wasn't it wrong to claim that Britain was one of the best placed countries in the world to withstand recession? Admit it.
No, Mr. Speaker, because the fact is America entered recession more than a year and 3 months ago. The euro area entered recession in April last year. We entered recession in July. We stopped going into recession for months after what had happened in America, and the action that we are taking now is designed to get us through this as quickly as possible. Now, let me correct him on further education colleges, because we're going to spend £110 million this year investing in further education colleges. Let me correct him on public expenditure, because we are investing £44 billion this year in health and education and other capital investment projects to help us through this downturn. And let me correct him again on unemployment. Unemployment is far higher in America, in France and Germany and the euro area. Now, I know that is little comfort to people in this country, and that is why we're doing everything we can to help them.
Well, let me correct. Yes, there is plenty more. Let me correct the Prime Minister. Let me correct the Prime Minister on the figures he's just given to the House of Commons. He says the recession started in July. The economy stopped growing in April last year. We've been in recession for almost a year. Let me correct him. Yes. Let me correct him on the FE colleges, on the further education colleges. He should come to my own constituency in Witney, where people are in temporary classrooms because the whole building projects had to be abandoned because of his incompetent government. The whole country will see that the Prime Minister is in denial about the length and the depth of the recession. He likes to talk about the schemes he's announced, so let's have a look at them. Can he confirm that not a single unemployed person has been helped by the recruitment subsidies that we called for in November and that he announced in January? And can he confirm that not one single homeowner has been helped by the Homeowners Mortgage Support Scheme that the Prime Minister announced in December? Isn't it the case that these two specific schemes simply aren't operating?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, he's wrong about the start date of the recession. Secondly, he's wrong about further education, because 110 million will be spent this year. Thirdly, he says we're not doing anything. I tell him in the last recession there was no help available for the unemployed. We are spending 1.3 billion to help people get into work. And let's just go through the things we're doing. Train to Gain used to be 300,000 people. It's going to rise to 1 million people helped under Train to Gain. Mortgage support, we raised the levels of support so that people can stay in their homes even when they find that they lose their jobs. And as the Secretary of Work announced, it was in April, that is next month, that these programmes will come in that will help people who are 6 months unemployed. And that was the date we set. The problem is, he asks us to do more, but he's the only opposition in history that is asking us to do more by saying he will spend less. And it just doesn't add up.
Mr. Speaker, we've just had, Mr. Speaker, the view from the bunker, where all these schemes are operating, where everything has been implemented. And the fact is, on the ground, these things aren't happening. It's not, and we get a lecture. We get a lecture in competence from a government that couldn't even stop Fred Goodwin, Sir Fred Goodwin, because he knighted him for his services to the banking industry. That's so incompetent, couldn't stop him walking off with a pension that's worth £60,000 a month. But it's not just the housing scheme and the job scheme. The asset-backed security scheme, that's not up and running. The working capital scheme, that's not working properly. Isn't that why the CBI said this government has a total lack of a coherent strategy? Isn't that why Shelter say people facing repossessions have been given, and I quote, false hope? Does the Prime Minister regret giving these people false hope?
That is not what we've done. We've negotiated with the building societies and banks a 6 months moratorium for people who are faced with mortgage repossession. We've sent new orders to our courts that people cannot, as a first resort, go to repossession. They've got to go through all the proper processes before they even consider that. We are helping people who are unemployed with their mortgages at a level that has not been done before. And next month, we bring in the protection scheme, which is us insuring the banks and the building societies against loss so that people can phase their mortgages over a longer period of time. The problem he has got is everything he proposes, he will not fund. And everything he says he will do. On Monday, he said there were going to be more cuts in public expenditure. Already he's refused to support the £1.3 billion that is going in to help the job centres and to help people who are unemployed. It is simply not credible to come to this House and say that he is urging us to do something when he would pay for absolutely nothing.
I don't know why. I know the Prime Minister doesn't just listen to his own employment minister, who this morning actually had the courage to leave the bunker for a moment and say this. He said, yes, there is a frustration about these schemes and the money and the credit getting through. If the Prime Minister had listened to us, he would have introduced a national loan guarantee scheme back in November. It would have been operating for 5 months. Shouldn't he listen to the German Chancellor, who stood with him in Downing Street and said this? Angela Merkel said this: if we want to make real impact, I think the Honourable Member Bolsover should be quiet. I know he wanted Miners to join the government. Well, he got him now, Lord Miners. This is what... This is... Let me go back to the German Chancellor. The German Chancellor said this. The German Chancellor said...
Miss Snellgrove, I've told you before, it's not the done thing to shout in the chamber. You shouldn't be doing that. Maybe get a wee tablet for the doctor or something, but you shouldn't be shouting.
Quietly, Lyle.
The trouble is, Mr. Speaker, they all want Lord Miners to negotiate their retirement packages. Call an election and we can arrange it. Right, back to the German Chancellor. She said this: if we want to make a real impact, you really must implement the package first before you talk about the next step. Isn't that right? Isn't this government just running around like headless chickens with initiative after initiative that never get implemented? And isn't this combination of ineffectiveness and hyperactivity the worst combination of all?
Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman opposed the German fiscal expansion. He opposed every fiscal expansion in America, in Germany, in France. He is out on a limb in opposing public expenditure rising in a down